Celine said. For that to fall into the wrong hands. The Horn of Valier. I could not tell you how often I've dreamed of touching it, holding it in my hands. You must promise me when you have it, you will let me touch it. Before I can do that, we have to find it. We had better get away. Rand offered his hand to help her mount. Huron scrambled down to hold her stirrup. Whatever that thing was I killed, a Grolm? There may be more of them around. Her hand was firm. There was surprising strength in her grip, and her skin was silver. Something softer, smoother. Rand shivered. There always are, Celine said. The tall white mare frisked and bared her teeth once at Red, yet Celine's touch on the reins quieted her. Rand slung his bow across his back and climbed onto Red. Light. How could anyone's skin be so light? Huron, where's the trail? Huron? Huron! The sniffer gave a start and left off staring at Celine. Yes, Lord Rand. The trail. South, my lord. Still south. Then let's ride. Rand gave an uneasy look at the gray-green bulk of the Grolm lying in the stream. It had been better believing they were the only living things in that world. Take the trail, Huron. Celine rode alongside Rand first, talking of this and that, asking him questions and calling him Lord. Half a dozen times he started to tell her he was no lord, only a shepherd. And every time, looking at her, he could not get the words out. A lady like her would not talk the same way with a shepherd, he was sure, even one who had saved her life. You will be a great man when you've found the Horn of Valier, she told him. A man for the legends. The man who sounds the horn will make his own legends. I don't want to sound it, and I don't want to be part of any legend. I did not know if she was wearing perfume, but there seemed to be a scent to her, something that filled his head with her. Spices, sharp and sweet, tickling his nose, making him swallow. Every man wants to be great. You could be the greatest man in all the ages. Too close to what Moraine had said. The dragon reborn would certainly stand out through the ages. Not me, he said fervently. I'm just... He thought of her scorn if he told her now that he was only a shepherd after letting her believe he was a lord, and changed what he had been going to say. Just trying to find it.
Hey, Basti, how you doing? Definitely appreciate you stopping by, bro.
Then said, you have hurt your hand. It is nothing. He started to put his injured hand inside his coat. It throbbed from holding the reins.
Hope you're doing well
She
tonight.
reached out and took it. He was so surprised he looked. And then there was nothing to do except either jerk away rudely or else let her unwrap the kerchief. Her touch
And
felt
just pretty
cool
much
and
chilling, smoking a bowl before bed.
really red and puffy, but the hair and
How you been doing?
plainly and clearly. She touched the brand with a finger,
Hell yeah.
but made no comment on it, not even to ask how he had come by it.
I smoked my last little bowl I have.
This could stiffen your hand if it's untended. I have an ointment.
I haven't done a dab in a little bit.
From a pocket inside her cloak, she produced a small stone vial, unstopped, and began gently rubbing a white salve on the burn as they rode. The ointment felt cold at first, then seemed to melt away warmly into his flesh. And it worked as well as Nynaeve's ointments sometimes did. He stared in amazement as the red.
Oh, we both haven't been too bad, Basti. Same old,
She said, not raising her eyes from his hand. Choose to seek greatness, while others are forced to it. It is always better to choose than to be forced. The man who's forced is never completely his own master. He must dance on the strings of those who forced him. Rand pulled his hand free. The brand looked a week old or more, all but healed. What do you mean? He demanded. She smiled at him, and he felt ashamed of his outburst. Why, the horn, of course, she said calmly, putting away her salve. Her mare, stepping along beside Red, was tall enough that her eyes were only a little below Rand's. If you find the Horn of Valier, there will be no avoiding greatness. But will Will it be forced on you, or will you take it? That's the question. He flexed his hand. She sounded so much like Moraine. Are you Aes Sedai?
Yeah, I can't sleep.
Celine's eyebrows.
I've always had
Her
trouble
dark eyes glittered at him,
sleeping.
but her voice was soft. Aes
Oh, you
Sedai.
can't? Can you not sleep either right now? Embarrassing.
I didn't mean to offend you. I'm sorry. Offend me?
And I try to do these little ones because
But I know Aes Sedai.
I guess
The
they help me
lip
sleep a
curled in
little
sneer.
bit.
Even that was beautiful.
Excuse me.
They cower in what they think is safety when they could do so much.
Just chill, listen to a book, smoke a bowl.
Let men fight wars when they could bring order to the world. No. Never call me Aes Sedai. She smiled and laid her hand on his arm to show she was not angry. Her touch made him swallow. But he was relieved when she let the mare drop back beside Loyal. Huron bobbed his head at her like an old family retainer. Rand was relieved, but he missed her presence too. She was only 2 spans away. He twisted in his saddle to stare at her, riding by Loyal's side. The Ogier was bent half double in his saddle so he could talk with her, but that was not the same as being right there beside him. Close enough for him to smell her heady scent, close enough to touch. He settled back angrily. It was not that he wanted to touch her exactly. He reminded himself that he loved Egwene. He felt guilty at the need for reminding. But she was beautiful, and she thought he was a lord, and she said he could be a great man. He argued sourly with himself inside his head. Moraine says you can be great too. The dragon reborn. Selene is not Aes Sedai. That's right. She's a Carianan noblewoman, and you're a She doesn't know that. How long do you let her believe a lie? It's only till we get out of this place. If we get out. Yeah. On that note, his thoughts subsided to sullen silence. He tried to keep a watch on the country through which they rode. If Selene said there were more of those things, those Grolm about, he believed her. And Huron was too intent on smelling the trail to notice anything else. Loyal was too wrapped up in his talk with Selene to see anything until it bit him on the heel. But it was hard to watch. Turning his head too quickly made
That
his
Sacred
eyes
Garden
water.
dispensary.
A hill or a
I'm not
standing
sure we
tree
got
was
that
a single
dispensary
mile
here or
off
not.
when seen from one angle, and only a few hundred spans when seen from another. The mountains were getting closer, of that much he was sure. Kinslayer's dagger looming against the sky now.
We might have to check. I know we got a lot of new dispensaries
The land
pop
around
up since
them
we're
already
at Wreck.
rose in foothills.
I'm not
heralding
sure we
the coming
have a
of the
sacred
mountains.
one here.
They would reach
Or
the
a
edge of the
sacred
mountains
guardian.
proper well before dark. Perhaps in only another hour or so. More than 100 leagues in less than 3 days. Worse than that. We spent most of a day south of the Erin and in the real world. Over 100 leagues in less than 2 days here.
She says you were right about this place, Rand.
Rand gave a start before he realized Loyal had ridden up beside him. He looked for Selene and found her riding with Huron. The sniffer was grinning and ducking his head and all but knuckling his forehead at everything she said. Rand glanced sideways at the Ogier. I'm surprised you could let her go, the way you two had your heads together.
Well, we're also in
What do you
a
mean,
small
I was
town,
right?
so we don't got as many
She is a
dispos as
fascinating woman,
a
isn't
bigger
she?
city, say.
Some of the elders don't know as much as she does about history, especially the Age of Legends, and about. Oh yes. She says
Hell
you're
yeah,
right about the ways.
Bassy.
The Aes Sedai, some of them studied worlds like this. That study was the basis of how.
I know the dabs here are expensive.
She says there are worlds where it is time rather than distance that changes. Spend a day in one of those, and you might come back to find a year has passed.
At least
from
here,
that
I'm not sure the
world.
bigger towns and cities
Or it
and
could
whatnot
be the
here
other way
in New
around.
Mexico, but I know where
Those
me and my
worlds,
brother
this
live,
one, all the others,
you're
are
paying like
reflections of the real world, she says.
40 or 50
This
for
one seems
half
real to
gram
us
of
because
wax.
it is a weak reflection. A world that had little chance of ever being. Others are almost as likely as ours. They are as solid as our world and have people. The same people, she says, Rand. Imagine it. You could go to one of them and meet yourself. The pattern has infinite variation, she says, and every variation that can be, will be.
Rand shook his head, then wished he had not, as the landscape flickered back and forth and his stomach lurched. He took a deep breath. How does she know all that? You know more about things than anybody I ever met before, Loyal. And all you knew about this world amounted to no more than a rumor.
She's Kyrian in Rand. The Royal Library in Kyrian is one of the greatest in the world. Perhaps the greatest by Tarvalin. The Aiel spared it deliberately, you know. When they burned Kyrian, they will not destroy a book. Did you know that they...
I don't care about Aielman, Rand said hotly. If Selene knows so much, I hope she read how to get us home from here. I wish Selene... You wish Selene what? The woman laughed as she joined them. Rand stared at her as if she had been gone months. That was how he felt. I wish Selene would come ride with me some more.
Nice. I wish they would do that here.
Loyal chuckled and Rand felt his face burn. Selene smiled and looked at Loyal. You will excuse us, Alante? Gilgear bowed in his saddle and let his big horse fall back, the tufts on his ears drooping with reluctance. For a time, Rand rode in silence, enjoying Selene's presence. Now and again, he looked at her out of the corner of his eye. He wished he could get his feelings about her straight. Could she be an Aes Sedai despite her denial? Someone sent by Moraine to push him along whatever path he was.
I know once in a while down here,
Moraine
on
could
certain
not have
days,
known
some of the
he took
dispensers
this
will have
world, and no Aes
the
Sedai
wax
would
on
try to
sale,
kill
and
that beast with
it's
a stick
still
when she
like
could strike it dead or send it
you're
running
paying
into
like
power.
$15-$20 for half a gram.
Well, since she took him for a lord and no one in Kyrian knew different, he might keep on letting her think it. She was surely the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, intelligent and learned. And she thought he was brave. What more could a man ask from a wife? That's crazy, too. I'd marry Egwene if I could marry anyone. But I can't ask a woman to marry a man who's going to go mad, maybe hurt her. But Selene was so beautiful. She was studying his sword, he saw.
But I guess that's the
He readied the words in his head.
bad part about small towns
But
is
his father had given him the sword.
they know they can charge what they want,
Mike
and
really be my father. He
you're
squashed
not really
the
gonna
thought
have much
ruthlessly.
other choice but to pay that price
It was
or
a
if
magnificent
we want to go
shot,
to the
Selene
dispensary.
said. No, I'm not a... Rand began, then blinked. A shot? Yes. A tiny target, that eye, moving at 100 paces. You've a wonderful hand with that bow. Rand shifted off. Thank you. It's a trick my father taught me. He told her about the void, about how Tam had taught him how to use it with the bow. He even found himself telling her about Lan and his sword lessons. The oneness, she said, sounding satisfied. She saw his questioning look and added, that is what it is called in some places. The oneness. To learn the full use of it, it is best to wrap it around you continuously, to dwell in it at all times.
Hell yeah, Bastard had to.
He did not even have to think about what lay waiting for him in the void to know his answer to that.
Yeah, we definitely got to do that,
What he said
Bastard.
was, I'll think about it. Wear this void of yours all the time, Rand al'Thor, and you'll learn uses for it you never suspected. I said I'll think about it. She opened her mouth again, but he cut her off. You know all these things. About the void, the oneness, you call it. About this world. Loyal reads books all the time. He's read more books than I've ever seen.
So I know I might be in
And he's never seen anything but a fragment of
Albuquerque for a
stones.
little bit sometime
Selene
in,
drew herself up straight
I
in her
think,
saddle.
May,
Suddenly she reminded him of Moraine.
because
And of Queen
I'm gonna be
Morgase,
going with
when they were
my
angry.
my
There was a
older
book written
brother,
about these worlds,
or
she
mine
said
and my
quickly.
mine and most hated
There
older
is a
brother,
Lugia. You
and
see,
our
the
mom.
Atlantan has not seen
We're
all the
gonna be
books
going
that
to our cousin's wedding, which is in
What is this
Casper,
Atlantan you call it?
Wyoming, and I guess
Never
we're gonna
heard
go
of
through
it. The
Albuquerque
portal stone
up in
in
that
which I
way
woke
to
up
go
is there,
to head up that
Selene
way.
said, pointing into the mountains off to the east of their path.
Hell yeah, I
Sounded
got
daunting
I
for
got
her
it down,
and her smiles.
Basing.
If you take me to it, you can return me to my
Excuse
home
me.
as you promised. We can reach it in an hour. Rand barely looked where she pointed. using the
I
stone
might be, yeah, but like I said, May, I might be up there
and wielding the
for a little
power
bit.
if you were to take her back to the real world. Huron, how is the trail? Tighter than ever, Lord Rand. But still there. The sniffer spared a quick grin and bob of his head for Celine. I think it's starting to angle off to the west. There's some easier passes there. Toward the tip of the dagger, as I recall from when I went to Kyrie in that time. Rand sighed. Bane, or one of his dark friends, has to know another way to use the stones. A dark friend couldn't use the power. I have to follow the horn, Celine. How do you know your precious horn is even in this world? Come with me, Rand. You'll find your legend, I promise you. Come with me. You can use the stone, this portal stone, yourself, he said angrily. Before the words were out of his mouth, he wanted them back. Why does she have to keep talking about legends? Stubbornly, he forced himself to go on. The portal stone didn't bring you here by itself. You did it, Celine. If you made the stone bring you here, you can make it take you back. I'll take you to it, but then I must go after the horn. I know nothing about using the portal stones, Rand. If I did anything, I don't know what it was. Rand studied her. She sat her saddle, straight-backed and tall, just as regally as before.
I'll probably shoot you a message tomorrow. That way you got my number down too, Bassie.
He'd put Nynaeve's age to her, a handful of years older than himself. But he'd been wrong, he realized. She was more his own age, and beautiful. And she needed him. The thought, just the thought of the void flickered through his head, and of the light. Saidin. To use the portal stone, he must dip himself back into that taint. Stay with me, Celine, he said. We'll find the horn and Matt's dagger, and we'll find a way back, I promise you. Just stay with me. You always... Celine drew a deep breath as if to calm herself. You always are so stubborn. I admire stubbornness in a man. There is little to a man who's too easily biddable. Rand colored. It was too much like the things Egwene sometimes said.
I hope everyone else is doing good this evening or this morning, whichever it is for you.
The words and the direct look that went with them were a shock. He turned to tell Huron to press on with the trail. From behind them came a distant coughing grunt. Before Rand could whirl red to look, another bark sounded, and three more on its heels. At first he could make out nothing as the landscape seemed to waver in his eyes. But then he saw them through the widespread stands of trees just topping a hill. 5 shapes, it seemed, only half a mile distant. A bare 1,000 paces at most, and coming in 30-foot bounds. Gruul, Celine said calmly. A small pack, but they have our scent, it seems. Chapter 17. Choices. We'll run for it, Rand said. Huron, can you gallop and still follow the trail? Yes, Lord Rand. Then push on, we will... It won't do any good, Celine said. Her white mare was the only one of their mounts not dancing at the gruff barks coming from the Gruul. They don't give up, not ever. Once they have your scent, Gruul keep coming, day and night, until they run you down. You must kill them all or find a way to go elsewhere. Rand, the portal stone can take us elsewhere. No, we can kill them. I can.
Yeah, bro. You have a good night too, brother.
There are only 5. If I can just find it.
And stay safe out there too.
And found it. Follow me. Digging his heels in, he set Red to a gallop, confident before he heard their hooves that the others would come. The place he had chosen was a low, round hill, bare of trees. Nothing could come close without him seeing. He swung down from his saddle and unlimbered his longbow. Loyal and Huron joined him on the ground, the Ogier hefting his huge quarterstaff, the sniffer with his short sword in his fist. Neither quarterstaff nor sword would be of much use if the was close with them. I won't let them get close. This risk is not necessary, Celine said. She barely looked toward the Gruul, bending from her saddle to concentrate on Rand. We can easily reach the portal stone ahead of them. I will stop them. Hastily, Rand counted the arrows remaining in his quiver. 18, each as long as his arm, 10 of them with points like chisels, designed to drive through Trolloc armor. They would do as well for Grolm as for Trollocs. He stuck 4 of those upright in the ground in front of him. A 5th he knocked to the bow. Loyal, Huron, you can do no good down here. Mount to be ready to take Selene to the stone if any get through. He wondered whether he could kill one of the things with his sword, if it came to that. You are mad. Even the power is not as bad as this. Loyal said something, but he did not hear. He was already seeking the void, as much to escape his own thoughts as for need. You know what's waiting, but this way I don't have to touch it. The glow was there, the light just out of sight. It seemed to flow toward him, but the emptiness was all. Thoughts darted across the surface of the void, visible in that tainted light. Saidin. The power. Madness. Death. Extraneous thoughts. He was one with the bow, with the arrow, with the things topping the next rise. Grolm came on, overreaching one another with their lips. 5 great leathery shapes, triple-eyed, with horny maws gaping. Their grunting calls rebounded from the void, barely heard. Rand was not aware of raising his bow, or drawing the fletching against his cheek to his lips. He was one with the beasts, one with the center eye of the first. Then the arrow was gone. The first Grolm died. One of its companions leaped on it as it fell, beak of a mouth dripping gobbets of flesh. It snarled at the others, and they circled wide. But they came on, and as if compelled, it abandoned its meal and leaped after them, its horny maw already bloody. Rand worked smoothly, unconsciously. Knock and release. Knock and release. The 5th arrow left his bow, and he lowered it, still deep in the void, as the 4th Grolm fell like a huge puppet with its strings cut. Though the final arrow still flew, somehow he knew there was no need for another shot. The last beast collapsed as if its bones had melted, a feathered shaft jutting from its center eye. Always the center eye. Magnificent, Lord Rand, Huron said. I've never seen shooting like that. The void held Rand. The light called to him, and he reached toward it. It surrounded him, filled him. Lord Rand? Huron touched his arm, and Rand gave a start, the emptiness filling up with what was around him. Are you all right, my lord? Rand brushed his forehead with fingertips. It was dry. He felt as if it should have been covered with sweat. I'm fine, Huron. It grows easier the more you do it, I've heard, Selene said. The more you live in the oneness, the easier. Rand glanced at her. Well, I don't need it again, not for a while. What happened? I wanted to. He still wanted to, he realized with horror. He wanted to go back into the void, wanted to feel that light filling him again. It had seemed as if he were truly alive then, sickliness and all. And now was only an imitation. No, worse. He had been almost alive, knowing what alive would be like. All he had to do was reach out to Saidin. Not again, he muttered. He gazed off at the dead Grolm. 5 monstrous shapes lying on the ground. Not dangerous anymore. Now he can be on our... A coughing bark, all too familiar, sounded beyond the dead Grolm. Beyond the next hill, and others answered it. Still more came, from the east, from the west. Rand half raised his bow. How many arrows do you have left? Selene demanded. Can you kill 20 Grolm? 30? 100? We must go to the portal stone.
She is right, Rand.
Loyal said slowly.
We do not have any choice now.
Huron was watching Rand anxiously. The Grolm called, a score of barks overlapping. A stone, Rand agreed reluctantly. Angrily, he threw himself back into his saddle, slung the bow on his back. Lead us to this stone, Selene. With a nod, she turned her mare and heeled it to a trot. Rand and the others followed, they eagerly, he holding back. The barks of Grom pursued them, hundreds it seemed. It sounded as if the Grom were ranged in a semicircle around them, closing in from every direction but the front. Swiftly and surely, Selene led them through the hills. The land rose in the beginning of mountains, slopes steepening so the horses scrambled over washed-out-looking rocky outcrops, and the sparse, faded-looking brush that clung to them. The way became harder, the land slanting more and more upward. We're not going to make it, Rand thought. The fifth time Red slipped and slid backwards in a shower of stone. Loyal threw his quarterstaff aside. It would be of no use against Grom, and it only slowed him. The Ogier had given up riding. He used one hand to haul himself up, and then pulled his tall horse behind him with the other. The hairy, fat-like animal made heavy going, but easier than with Loyal on its back. Grom barked at them closer. Then Selene drew rein and pointed to a hollow nestled below them in the granite. It was all there, the 7 wide colored stairs around a pale floor, and the tall stone column in the middle. She dismounted and led her mare into the hollow, down the stairs to the column. It loomed over her. She turned to look back up at Rand and the others. The Grom gave their grunting barks, scores of them, loud, near. They will be on us soon, she said. You must use the stone, Rand, or else find a way to kill all the Grom. With a sigh, Rand got down from his saddle and led Red into the hollow. Loyal and Huron followed hastily. He stared at the symbol-covered column, the portal stone, uneasily. She must be able to channel, even if she doesn't know it, or it couldn't have brought her here. The power doesn't harm women. If this brought you here, he began, but she interrupted him. I know what it is, she said firmly, but I do not know how to use it. You must do what must be done. She traced one symbol, a little larger than the others, with a finger. A triangle standing on its point inside a circle. This stands for the true world, our world. I believe it will help if you hold it in your mind while you... She spread her hands as if unsure exactly what it was he was supposed to do. My lord, Huron said diffidently. There isn't much time. He glanced over his shoulder at the rim of the hollow. The barking was louder. Those things will be here in minutes now. Loyal nodded. Drawing a deep breath, Rand put his hand on the symbol Selene had pointed out. He looked at her to see if he was doing it right, but she merely watched, not even the slightest frown of worry wrinkling her pale forehead. She's confident you can save her. You have to. The scent of her filled his nostrils. My lord. Rand swallowed and sought the void. It came easily, springing up around him without effort. Emptiness. Emptiness except for the light, wavering in a way that turned his stomach. Emptiness except for Saidin. But even the queasiness was distant. He was one with the portal stone. The column felt smooth and slightly oily under his hand, but the triangle and circle seemed warm against the brand on his palm. I have to get them to safety. I have to get them home. The light drifted toward him, it seemed, surrounded him, and he embraced it. Light filled him. Heat filled him. He could see the stone. Loyal and Huron anxiously, Selene showing no doubt that he could save her. But they might as well not have been there. The light was all. The heat and the light suffusing his limbs like water sinking into dry sand, filling him. The symbol burned against his flesh. He tried to suck it all in. All the heat, all the light, all. The symbol. Suddenly, as if the sun had gone out for a blink of an eye, the world flickered. And again. The symbol was a live coal under his hand. He drank in the light. The world flickered, flickered. It made him sick, that light. It was water to a man dying of thirst. Flicker. He sucked at it. It made him want to vomit. He wanted it all. Flicker. The triangle and circle seared him. He could feel it charring his hand. flicker. He wanted it all. He screamed, howling with pain, howling with wanting. Flicker, 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 flicker. Hands pulled at him. He was only vaguely aware of them. He staggered back. The void was slipping away. The light and the sickness that twisted at him. The light. He watched it go regretfully. Light. It's crazy to want it. But I was so full of it. I was so dazed. He stared at Celine. It was she who held his shoulders, stared wonderingly into his eyes. He raised his hand in front of his face. The Heron brand was there, but nothing else. No triangle and circle burned into his flesh. Remarkable, Celine said slowly. She glanced at Loyal and Huron. The Ogier looked stunned, his eyes as big as plates. The sniffer was squatting with one hand on the ground, as if unsure he could support himself else. All of us here, and all of our horses. And you do not even know what you did. Remarkable. Are we? Rand began hoarsely, and had to stop to swallow. Celine said. You've brought us home. She gave a sudden laugh. You brought all of us home. For the first time, Rand became aware of his surroundings again. The hollow surrounded them without any stairs, though here and there lay a suspiciously smooth piece of stone, colored red or blue. The column lay against the mountainside, half buried in the loose rock of a fall. The symbols were unclear. Wind and water had worked along with them, and everything looked real. The colors were solid, the granite a strong gray, the brush green and brown. After that other place, it seemed almost too vivid. Home, Rand breathed, and then he was laughing too. We're home. Loyal's laughter sounded like a bull bellowing. Huron danced a caper. You did it, Celine said, leaning closer, until her face filled Rand's eyes. I knew that you could. Rand's laughter died. I suppose I did. He glanced at the fallen portal stone and managed to reply. I wish I knew what it was I did, though. Celine looked deep into his eyes. Perhaps one day you will know, she said softly. You are surely destined for great things. Her eyes seemed as dark and deep as night, as soft as velvet. Her mouth? If I kissed her. He blinked and stepped back hurriedly, clearing his throat. Celine, please don't tell anyone about this. About the portal stone and me. I don't understand it, and neither will anybody else. You know how people are about things they don't understand. Her face wore no expression at all. Suddenly, he wished very much that Matt and Perrin were there. Perrin knew how to talk to girls, and Matt could lie with a straight face. He could manage neither very well. Suddenly, Celine smiled and dropped a half-mocking curtsy. I will keep your secret, my Lord Rand al'Thor. Rand glanced at her and cleared his throat again. Is she angry with me? She'd certainly be angry if I had tried to kiss her, I think. He wished she would not look at him as she was, as if she knew what he was thinking. Huron, is there any chance the Dark Friends used this stone before us? The sniffer shook his head ruefully. They were angling to the west of here, Lord Rand. Unless these portal stone things are more common than it seems, I'd say they're still in that other world. But it wouldn't take me an hour to check it. The land's the same here as there. I could find the place here where I lost the trail there, if you see what I mean, and see if they've already gone by. Rand glanced at the sky. The sun, a wonderfully strong sun, not pale at all, sat low in the west, stretching their shadows out across the hollow. Another hour would bring full twilight. In the morning, he said. But I fear we've lost them. We can't lose that dagger. We can't. Celine, if that's the case, in the morning we will take you on to your home. Is it in the city of Cairhien itself, or... You may not have lost the Hornavalia yet, Celine said slowly. As you know, I do know a few things about those worlds.
Mirrors of the wheel,
Loyal said. She gave him a look, then nodded. Yes, exactly. Those worlds truly are mirrors in a way, especially the ones where there are no people. Some of them reflect only great events in the true world, but some have a shadow of that reflection even before the event occurs. The passage of the Horn of Valir would certainly be a great event. Reflections of what will be are fainter than reflections of what is, or what was, just as Huron says the trail he followed was faint. Huron blinked incredulously. You mean to say, milady, I've been smelling where those dark friends are going to be? The light help me, I wouldn't like that. It's bad enough smelling where violence has been, without smelling where it will be, too. There can't be many spots where there won't be some kind of violence sometime. It would drive me crazy like as not. That place we just left nearly did. I could smell it all the time there. Killing and hurting, and the vilest evil you could think of. I could even smell it on us. On all of us. Even on you, my lady, if you'll forgive me for saying so. It was just that place, twisting me the way it twisted your eye. He gave himself a shake. I'm glad we're out of there. I can't get it out of my nostrils yet all the way. Rand rubbed absently at the brand on his arm. What do you think, Loyal? Could we really be ahead of Thane's dark friends? The Ogier shrugged, frowning.
I don't know, Rand. I don't know anything about any of this. I think we are back in our world. I think we are in Kinslayer's dagger. Beyond that,
He shrugged again. We should be seeing you home, Selene, Rand said. Your people will be worried about you. A few days will see if I'm right, she said impatiently. Huron can find where he left the trail. He said so. We can watch over it. The Horn of Valir cannot be much longer reaching here. The Horn of Valir, Rand. Think of it. The man who sounds the horn will live in legend forever. I don't want anything to do with legends, he said sharply. What if the Dark Friends get by you? What if Ingtar lost them? Then the Dark Friends have the Horn of Valir forever, and Matt dies. All right. A few days. At the worst, we'll probably meet Ingtar and the others. I can't imagine they've stopped or turned back just because we went away. A wise decision, Rand, Selene said, and well thought out. She touched his arm and smiled, and he found himself again thinking of kissing her. We need to be closer to where they'll come, if they do come. Huron, can you find us a camp before dawn? Somewhere we can watch the place where you lost the trail.
Right back.
He glanced at the portal stone and thought about sleeping near it. Thought of the way the void had crept up on him in sleep the last time, and the light in the void. Somewhere well away from here. Leave it in my hands, Lord Rand. The sniffer scrambled to his saddle. I vow I'll never sleep again without first I see what kind of stone there is nearby. As Rand rode Red up out of the hollow, he found himself watching Selene more than he did Huron. She seemed so cool and self-possessed. No older than he, yet queenly. And when she smiled at him, as she did just then, Egwene wouldn't have said I was wise. Egwene would have called me a woolhead. Irritably, he healed Red's flanks.
Chapter 18. To the White Tower. Egwene balanced on the healing deck as the River Queen sped down the wide Aranon under cloud-dark skies, sails full-bellied, white flame banner whipping furiously at the mainmast. The wind had risen as soon as the last of them was aboard the ships, back in Meadow, and it had not failed or flagged for an instant since, day or night. The river had begun to race in flood, as it still did, slapping the ships about while it drove them onward. Wind and river had not slowed, and neither had the ships, all clustered together. The River Queen led, only right, for the vessel that carried the Amaryllis seed. The helmsman held his tiller grimly, feet planted and spread, and sailors padded barefoot at their work, intent on what they did. When they glanced at the sky or the river, they tore their eyes away with low mutters. A village was just fading from behind, and a boy raced along the bank. He had kept up with the ships for a short distance, but now they were leaving him behind. When he vanished, Egwene made her way below. In the small cabin they shared, Nynaeve glared up at her from the narrow bed. They say we'll reach Tar Valon today. The light helped me, but I'll be glad to put foot on land again, even if it isn't Tar Valon. The ship surged with wind and current, and Nynaeve swallowed. I'll never step on a boat again, she said breathlessly. Egwene shook the river spray out of her cloak and hung it on a peg by the door. It was not a big cabin. There were no big cabins on the ship, it seemed, not even the one the Amyrlin had taken over from the captain, though that was larger than the rest. With its 2 beds built into the walls, shelves beneath them and cabinets above, everything lay close to hand. Except for keeping her balance, the movements of the ship did not bother her the way they did Nynaeve. She had given up offering Nynaeve food after the 3rd time the wisdom threw the bowl at her. I'm worried about Rand, she said. I'm worried about all of them, Nynaeve replied dully. After a moment, she said, Another dream last night? The way you've been staring at nothing since you got up. Egwene nodded. She had never been very good at keeping things from Nynaeve, and she had not tried with the dreams. Nynaeve had tried to dose her at first until she heard one of the Aes Sedai was interested. Then she began to believe. It was like the others. Different, but the same. Rand is in some kind of danger. I knew it. And it is getting worse. He's done something, or he's going to do something that puts him in... She dropped down on her bed and leaned toward the other woman. I just wish I could make some sense of it. Channeling, Nynaeve said softly. Despite herself, Egwene looked around to see if anyone was there to hear. They were alone, with the door closed, but still she spoke just as softly. I don't know. Maybe. There was no telling what Aes Sedai could do. She had seen enough already to make her believe every story of their powers, and she would not risk eavesdropping. I won't risk Rand. If I did right, I'd tell them. But Moiraine knows, and she hasn't said anything. And it's Rand. I can't. I don't know what to do. Has Anaya said anything more about these dreams? Nynaeve seemed to make it a point never to add the honorific Sedai, even when the 2 of them were alone. Most of the Aes Sedai appeared not to care, but the habit had earned a few strange looks, and some hard ones. She was going to train in the White Tower, after all. The wheel weaves as the wheel wills, Egwene quoted Anaya. The boy is far away, child, and there's nothing we can do until we know more. I will see to testing you myself once we reach the White Tower, child. Ah! She knows there is something in these dreams. I can tell she does. I like the woman, Nynaeve. I do. But she won't tell me what I want to know. And I can't tell her everything. Maybe if I could. The man in the mask again. Egwene nodded. Somehow she was sure it was better not to tell Anaya about him. She could not imagine why, but she was sure. 3 times the man whose eyes were fire had been in her dreams, each time when she dreamed a dream that convinced her Rand was in danger. He always wore a mask across his face. Sometimes she could see his eyes, and sometimes she could only see fire where they should be. He laughed at me. It was so contemptuous, as though I were a puppy he was going to have to push out of his way with his foot. It frightens me. He frightens me. Are you sure it has anything to do with the other dreams, with Rand? Sometimes a dream is just a dream. Egwene threw up her hands. And sometimes, Nynaeve, you sound just like Anaya Sedai. She put a special emphasis on the title, and was pleased to see Nynaeve grimace. If I ever get out of this bed, Egwene. A knock at the door cut off whatever Nynaeve had been going to say. Before Egwene could speak or move, the Amyrlin herself came in and shut the door behind her. She was alone, for a wonder. She seldom left her cabin, and then always with Lyanna at her side, and maybe another of the Aes Sedai. Egwene sprang to her feet. The room was a little crowded, with 3 of them in it. Both of you feeling well? The Amyrlin said cheerily. She tilted her head at Nynaeve. Eating well, too, I trust? In good temper? Nynaeve struggled to a sitting position with her back against the wall. My temper is just fine, thank you. We are honored, Mother, Egwene began, but the Amyrlin waved her to silence. It's good to be on the water again, but it grows boring as a mill pond after a while with nothing to do. The ship heeled, and she shifted her balance without seeming to notice. I will give you your lesson today. She folded herself onto the end of Egwene's bed, feet tucked under her. Sit, child. Egwene sat, but Nynaeve began trying to push herself to her feet. I think I will go on deck. I said sit! The Amyrlin's voice cracked like a whip, but Nynaeve kept rising, wavering. She still had both hands on the bed, but she was almost upright. Egwene held herself ready to catch her when she fell. Closing her eyes, Nynaeve slowly lowered herself back to the bed. Perhaps I will stay. It is no doubt windy up there. The Amyrlin blocked the latch. They told me you had a temper in you like a bird with a bone in its throat. Some of them, child, say you'd do well for some time as a novice, no matter how old you are. I say, if you have the ability I hear of, you deserve to be one of the accepted. She gave another laugh. I always believe in giving people what they deserve. Yes, I suspect you will learn a great deal once you reach the White Tower. I'd rather one of the warders taught me how to use a sword, Nynaeve growled. She swallowed convulsively and opened her eyes. There is someone I'd like to use it on. Egwene looked at her sharply. Did Nynaeve mean the Amyrlin, which was stupid and dangerous besides, or Lan? She snapped at Egwene every time Lan was mentioned. A sword, the Amyrlin said. I never thought swords were much use, even if you have the skill, child. There are always men who have as much and a deal more strength. But if you want a sword... She held up her hand, and Egwene gasped. Even Nynaeve's eyes bulged, and there was a sword. With blade and hilt of an odd bluish white, it looked somehow cold. Made from the air, child, with air. It's as good as most steel blades, better than most, but still not much use. The sword became a paring knife. There was no shrinking. It just was one thing, then the other. This now is useful. The paring knife turned to mist, and the mist faded away. The Amyrlin put her empty hand back in her lap. But either takes more effort than it is worth. Better, easier, simply, to carry a good knife with you. You have to learn when to use your ability as well as how, and when it's better to do things the way any other woman would. Let a blacksmith make knives for gutting fish. Use the one power too often and too freely, and you can come to like it too much. That way lies danger. You begin to want more of it, and sooner or later you run the risk of drawing more than you've learned to handle. And that can burn you out like a guttered candle, or... If I must learn all this, Nynaeve broke in stiffly, I would as soon learn something useful. All this... Make the air stir, Nynaeve. Light the candle, Nynaeve. Now put it out. Light it again. Ha! Egwene closed her eyes for a moment. Please, Nynaeve. Please keep a check on your temper. She bit her lip to keep from saying it out loud. The Amyrlin was silent for a moment. Useful, she said at last. Something useful. You wanted a sword. Suppose a man came at me with a sword. What would I do? Something useful, you can be sure. This, I think. For an instant, Egwene thought she saw a glow around the woman at the other end of her bed. Then the air seemed to thicken. Nothing changed that Egwene could see, but she could surely feel it. She tried to lift her arm. It did not budge any more than if she were buried to her neck in thick jelly. Nothing could move except her head. Release me, Nynaeve grated. Her eyes glared and her head jerked from side to side, but the rest of her sat as rigidly as a statue. Egwene realized that she was not the only one held. Let me go. Useful, wouldn't you say? And it is nothing but air. The Amyrlin spoke in a conversational tone as if they were all chatting over tea. big man with his muscles and his sword, and the sword does him as much good as the hair on his chest. Let me go, I say! And if I don't like where he is, why, I can pick him up. Nynaeve squawked furiously as she slowly rose, still in a sitting position, until her head almost touched the ceiling. The Amyrlin smiled. I've often wished I could use this to fly. The records say Aes Sedai could fly in the Age of Legends, but they aren't clear on how exactly. Not this way, though. It doesn't work like that. You might reach out with your hands and pick up a chest that weighs as much as you do. You look strong. But take hold of yourself however you will, you cannot pick yourself up. Nynaeve's head jerked furiously, but not another muscle of her twitched. The light burn you, let me go! Egwene swallowed hard, and hoped she was not also to be lifted. So, the Amyrlin continued, big, hairy man and so forth. He can do nothing to me, while I can do anything at all to him. Why? If I had a mind to... She leaned forward, her eyes intent on Nynaeve. Suddenly her smile did not seem very friendly. I could turn him upside down and paddle his bottom. Just like... Suddenly the Amyrlin flew backwards so hard, her head rebounded from the wall, and there she stayed, as if something were pressing against her. Egwene stared, her mouth dry. This isn't happening. It isn't. Then you're right, the Amyrlin said. Her voice sounded strained, as though she found it hard to breathe. They said you learned quickly, and they said it took your temper burning to get to the heart of what you can do. She took a struggling breath. Shall we release each other together, child? Nynaeve, floating in the air with her eyes ablaze, said, You let me go right now or I'll... Abruptly, a look of amazement came over her face, a look of loss. Her mouth worked silently. The Amyrlin sat up, working her shoulders. You don't know everything yet, do you, child? Not the 100th part of everything. You did not suspect I could cut you off from the true source. You can still feel it there, but you can't touch it any more than a fish can touch the moon. When you learn enough to be raised to full sisterhood, no one woman will be able to do that to you. The stronger you become, the more Aes Sedai will take to shield you against your will. Do you think now you want to learn? Nynaeve pressed her mouth shut in a thin line and stared her in the eye grimly. The Amyrlin sighed. If you had a hair less potential than you do, child, I would send you to the Mistress of Novices and tell her to keep you the rest of your life. But you will get what you deserve. Nynaeve's eyes widened, and she had just time to start a yell before she dropped, hitting her bed with a loud thud. Egwene winced. The mattresses were thin and the wood beneath hard. Nynaeve's face stayed frozen as she shifted the way she sat, just a fraction. And now, the Amyrlin said firmly, unless you would like further demonstration, we will get on with your lesson. Continue your lesson, we might say. Mother? Egwene said faintly. She still could not twitch below her chin. The Amyrlin looked at her questioningly, then smiled. Oh, I am sorry, child. Your friend was occupying my attention, I'm afraid. Suddenly, Egwene could move again. She raised her arms just to convince herself that she could. Are you both ready to learn? Yes, Mother, Egwene said quickly. The Amyrlin raised an eyebrow at Nynaeve. After a moment, Nynaeve said in a tight voice, Yes, Mother. Egwene heaved a sigh of relief. Good. Now, empty your thoughts of everything but a flower bud. Egwene was sweating by the time the Amyrlin left. She had thought that some of the other Aes Sedai had been hard teachers, but that smiling, plain-faced woman coaxed out every last drop of effort, drew it out, and when there was nothing left, she seemed to reach into you and pulled it out. It had gone well, though. As the door closed behind the Amyrlin, Egwene raised one hand. A tiny flame sprang to life, balanced a hair-breadth above the tip of her forefinger, then danced from fingertip to fingertip. She was not supposed to do this without a teacher, one of the accepted at the very least, to watch over her, but she was too excited at her progress to pay any mind to that. Nynaeve bounded to her feet and threw her pillow at the closing door. That vile, contemptible, miserable hag! The light burn her. I'd like to feed her to the fish. I'd like to dose her with things that would turn her green for the rest of her life. I don't care if she's old enough to be my mother. If I had her in Emmons Field, she wouldn't sit down comfortably for... Her teeth ground so loudly that Egwene jumped. Letting the flame die, Egwene put her eyes firmly on her lamp. She wished she could think of a way to sneak out of the room without catching Nynaeve's eye. The lesson had not gone well for Nynaeve, because she had held her temper on a tight lead until the Amyrlin was gone. She never could do very much unless she was angry, and then it all burst out of her. After failure
All right,
after
everyone, I'm
failure,
gonna
the Amyrlin
call
had done
Into This
everything
Life right
to
now.
rouse her again. Egwene wished
I wanna thank
Nynaeve
everyone for
could
stopping
forget
by
she'd
and
been there to
keeps
see
coming
or
back.
hear any of it.
But I got
Nynaeve
put my
started stiffly to her bed,
tablet on the
and
charger.
staring
It's
at the
at like
wall behind
10%.
her, her fist clenched at her side.
So I hope everyone stays safe out there. Until next time, everyone.
It was not your fault,
Have a good one.
Nynaeve said, and Egwene gave a start.